Música, música, música. Música, música, música. Music. I gotta talk about some music. Music's been very important and fun in my life. Always liked music. All kinds of music. Um, I've talked about that I have a record collection. Like there's some back here. I got a whole bunch of record albums that I've bought over the years, and there's all kinds of stuff. Um, Everything from Latin music to Leonard Bernstein to Isaac Perlman playing violin to concertos to like Broadway things. And then I have CDs, everything from klezmer music to Tito Puente and a whole bunch of Latin stuff. I'm probably the only person that you would know that has such a wide variety in taste in music. Because I don't know anybody else that likes all the kind of music that I like. I like almost everything, except rap music. I'm not a rap fan. I grew up through rap, and no. But when I was in elementary school, Tio Pancho had a stroke, and Dad went back to New York. For a long time, for me when I was a kid, that was like a year or more. I don't know how long Dad stayed in New York, because Dad was very close with his family. So when Dad came back, and Tio Pancho was okay and stuff, they did operations on his head, and then he was okay. So Dad came back, and it was like around Christmas time, and then Dad brought us presents. And one of the best presents I ever had was a transistor radio, little beige little transistor radio. Francis and me got the same kind of radio, but then Danny had to get a special one because Danny was always special. Danny's radio was like in a leather case, and it had a watch built into it. And of course, Danny broke broke the watch and stuff, but he had the special radio. So I would listen to music all the time, especially at night. I had a little earphone, and I'd go to sleep listening to music. In the morning, I'd wake up and the battery would be dead. It was a 9-volt battery. But that was in the 60s when music, rock and roll, and all this music was on the radio. In Los Angeles, I used to listen to KGFJ, which is the black station, and 93 KHJ, Los Angeles. That was the call letters for KHJ. But KGFJ was the Motown black station, rhythm and blues, and I listened to that and to 93 KHJ, Los Angeles, with Sam Riddle and all kinds of people. And they would play all that music from the 60s, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, you know, and then other stuff that, like country music, they would play that too. It wasn't like it was a country station, but all those famous country songs were, they would play them in between the rock and all this kind of stuff, which was wonderful. Because then I got this education of all kinds of different music. And then at times I changed the station and listened to the classical station. And it was a fantastic education for music. So nowadays, since forever, I've always liked all kinds of different music, and I would go and buy albums and stuff. And of course, I had Latin music albums. But I have all this other stuff too that you would never think I'd like. Klezmer music, you know. What is that? Jewish folk music. Um, and then, okay. So then, of course, I love Latin music and, you know, Tito Puente and the Fania All Stars and that kind of stuff. I used to go to dances all the time. When I went to New York when I was older in the 70s and stayed with Stanley, there was, I listened to the radio and I listened to songs that were coming out, like Larry Harlow and a bunch of, a bunch of stuff. All the famous Hector Lavoe and all of that. And then on the radio, I was listening to when I was in New York that there was going to be a concert in Madison Square Garden with the Fania All Stars. So I told Joe and Peggy about it, and then we went down to the box office in Madison Square Garden, and they didn't. I was going to get tickets for Joe and Peggy and me. So then I said, I want 3 tickets, and they said, no, well, there's no 3 tickets. So Joe, which I didn't think of, Joe goes, well, ask them just for 1 ticket. So yeah, I asked for one, and there was one. I think there was one in different places all around. So I got a 1 ticket for myself. So I went. That was a fantastic experience because I took the subway from Flatbush in Brooklyn, where Joe and Peggy lived, went into Manhattan. I don't know how I did it, but I did it. And went to Madison Square Garden and got there early, and they had those escalators. You went up and then got inside. And it was wonderful. All these Latinos everywhere. I had never been to a concert like that. And it was the Fania All Stars playing all of their hits at the time. And it was great. It was wonderful. It was it. And I had bought some records at the time. When I was at Titi Fefa's house, I went to the Marqueta that was underneath the L. I don't know if they call it the L around there in Manhattan. But there was a Marqueta. You had all kinds of fruits and vegetables and meat and I think clothes. And then there was a record store in there. So I asked for the Larry Harlow latest one, and I forget which other one. But and I took that back to California. So then in California, I had my a couple of, you know, Fania records, and then at the Palladium there was dances all the time. The Fania All Stars came every time they came during that time in the '70s. I went to the Palladium a bunch of times, a bunch of times, and it wasn't just the Fania All Stars. Celia Cruz came, and uh, a bunch of people came. And then one time in downtown, at a hotel in downtown, it was, I forget his name. You know, he sings Plenas from Puerto Rico and stuff. But I would go to all the dances all the time and just go. I didn't have, I was married part of that time at the later part, and I'd go by myself. I didn't care. Wife Olga didn't dance. I think Olga went one time and it was a disaster. But I would go by myself all the time and ask people to dance. And if somebody didn't want to, I just go on and on and on. You want to dance? Quiere bailar, quiere bailar. And I always find somebody and dance. And then there was a whole group of people that I knew that my age that would go from nightclub to nightclub and to big dance to big dance. And we knew each other and we'd all hang out and stuff. And it was great. There was Virginia's by MacArthur Park that I went a couple of times, you know. Sometimes we'd hang out in front and just listen to the music. And there was a Quiet Cannon in Montebello that I had went to a bunch when I was living with Frank over there in Monterey Park. They had good bands and stuff. And there was various nightclubs around town that bands would come to. Back in the days when bands really played and stuff like that. So I would go to the dances all the time, all the time, all the time. So then, at the same time in the '70s, Griffith Park, by the merry-go-round, people would come on Sundays and bring their congas and percussion instruments and stuff like that. And they'd be playing for hours and hours and hours. So I had adopted Aurelio's Goombop Conga. That Aurelio, I don't know, got from somewhere. But when I was young and I heard that Aurelio had that, I kind of stole it from Aurelio for years until they went back to San Diego. And begrudgingly, I picked it up and put it in the van and told Aurelio, I'd put the conga in your truck. But I used to carry that conga all around in my trunk, and every Sunday, almost every Sunday, I'd go to the park with all these other people that I knew, and we'd be playing congas for hours and hours. You know, all kinds of people. There was like Latinos, and there was black guys that would come, and then there was white dudes that didn't know anything, but would hit a bottle or something like that, you know. And I have pictures of that. And there's a video on my YouTube about lovin's and congas, and part of the pictures in there are from Griffith Park, and that went on for years and years. I think maybe till this day, if you go to Griffith Park on a Sunday, there's people playing congas. And they'll be out there for hours and hours playing and stuff like that. So ever since that transistor radio Dad gave me, and then listening to all that music from the '60s, and then going to New York and the Fania All Stars, and then going to the Palladium dancing and various nightclubs around town, I was always out dancing. My mom got mad when I married Olga. That Olga was all religious and shit, and she didn't go to the dances, and my mom was always kind of pissed that I wasn't going out, but I would sneak out and go to some of the dances and parties and stuff like that. Because one time when I had left Olga and I was living with Frank, I went to the Quiet Canyon in Montebello, and then some people saw me and they said, "Well, where have you been? We haven't seen you in the longest time." Because I had stopped going out and stuff. Because I was at every dance all the time. I would show up to the Palladium when there was a dance there. Like, before the bands showed up, they opened the doors and you can get your ticket and walk inside, and there'd be nobody there. They'd be sweeping up the floor. And I would get there super early, and then stay till the end when they were sweeping up again. I was always dancing and stuff. But then in the last few years, maybe within the last, I don't know, 10 to 5 years, I kind of got sick of salsa and Latin music. Because I want to change and evolve and do other things. I don't want to be stuck in one thing. That's why I change the color here and do different things all the time. I am a Renaissance man that most people don't know and would think that Emilio's a lame guy that doesn't know anything. I keep quiet. People say I'm shy. Well, that's my little front. I don't like to tell people what I do. Now I'm doing these videos and stuff. But I wanted to change and become more eclectic and listen to different kind of music, and I always did. When I had that transistor radio, I'd listen to all that music from the '60s, including the black station, and then symphonies and other things like that, and always loved that kind of stuff, always a different kind of music. So I didn't want to be stuck listening to the Fania All-Stars for the rest of my life. In fact, the last job I had at Scripps, there was these new installation people that I got to come there that were nicer people. They were Puerto Ricans. This was this guy and his father, and I got to know them very well, and they liked me. And the father said one day, "I have all these CDs, Latin salsa CDs. If you want them, I'll give them to you." And I thought, okay. He brought like 5 tote bags totally to the top of all kinds of music and stuff. And I went through it and kept a couple of them, maybe 10 of them, and sent the rest to Lelo and threw some out that I didn't even like. You know, 20 years ago, I would have never thought of giving stuff away. But now I give stuff away all the time. But like I said, I have albums, everything from Leonard Bernstein to Isaac Perman and some salsa things, but mostly all kinds of other stuff, operas, and stuff like Andy Williams and Dean Martin. Frank Sinatra, I have a whole bunch of Frank Sinatra albums. Love Frank Sinatra. So I didn't want to be stuck and, become this old man that was still listening to the Fania All-Stars from 20, 30 years ago and think that was the only kind of music, because there's people like that I know that you can't even say anything, bad about. "Well, I don't listen to that anymore." "Well, what's wrong with you?" I want to continue evolving in my life. I'll always like Latin music, but that's not, the main focus of the music that I listen to. All right. I just wanted to talk about música.